And we're looking good, you'll be in for a fight, and we fight pretty good. Getting goals is our job, and we get goals good. Looking good, we are Carlisle United.
Carlisle United, the team that's on the ball. Carlisle United, the team for one and all. You're looking good, and we're with you all the way. You'll hear us singing every time you play.
Hello everyone and welcome to the Dead Otter Society, aka the Brunton Bugle. Hello everyone, welcome to the latest episode of your one-stop shop for all things Carlisle United in the podcast world. From Reg Keating to Peter Keane and Trevor Malloy to Lee Madison, we've got it covered. And in today's episode, it's the last proper episode of this season. We're going to be doing a roundup of the latest news, including details of a new contract and announcements of the first pre-season friendlies. We're going to be discussing some of the topics raised at this week's Fans Forum, including some quite interesting revelations, I think, about the future of the club's ownership. We'll also be having a quick look down the release list for League One and League Two clubs, see if there's any players United maybe should be having a go at. And there's also going to be a quick player review on how we think players have gotten on this season. And as usual, we've got the usual roundup of ex-Blues and what they've been getting up to around the world. And I'm joined this episode by Dan McLennan. Dan, how's it going, Mara?
Not too bad, mate.
God, it's been a bit of a slog this season, isn't it? No, we've stopped saying what number episodes they are, but this is actually episode 50.
Yeah.
Incredibly, isn't it?
Yeah.
The amount we've got in of this last year. It's been hard work at times, but it's been enjoyable.
Looking forward to having a couple of weeks off in June.
It'll be nice, won't it? Yeah, like I said, we'll be getting the specials out of them. We'll talk more about that at the end of the episode. Do you know what the link is between the four players?
Oh, have they all played for a certain club as well as us?
No. It's goals. They've all scored one goal for us.
Right.
Interestingly. That's why Peter Keane's a bit the red herring there.
Yeah.
Don't necessarily think about that straight away.
Blackpool on a Tuesday night, that wasn't
Indeed, it was, yeah. I mean, Reg Keating, bear in mind, you're going back to the 1930s for that one. So
I've seen his name. I think he was possibly just before World War II either.
Yes, he was. That's who he was, yeah. And obviously Trevor Malloy, was the penalty at Lincoln in that infamous Battle of Sincil Bank?
Yeah.
And Lee Madison's goal, if you've not seen it, go to Jeff Jackson's archive of Carlisle United's highlights on YouTube. It was a rocket, wasn't it, this one?
Yeah.
Like 30 yards into the top corner from a player you'd never imagine would score a goal like that, would you? Never in a million years. Yeah. Well, we've got a bit to get through today, even though we haven't got any matches to review. So let's get straight into it. So we'll go straight into the news this week. Change it back to the way it normally should be, unlike last week. And it's a bit of good news aside, isn't it, Dan? So it's some contract news. So a few weeks ago, it was announced that Josh Dixon was one of our four young players who were having their 1-year extension option in their contracts triggered for next season. But it actually seems the club have been working behind the scenes on something a bit longer. So the Carlisle Bond midfielder is now signed a deal to keep him at the club till the summer of 2023. So a new 2-year deal. He's been so unlucky with injuries over the last couple of years, Josh, hasn't he, Dan? And he's worked so hard to get himself back up to fitness, and he didn't really get a pre-season last summer. I just really hope this is the club showing some good faith in him and saying that we want you to achieve big things next season.
Yeah, I mean, when he played in that friendly against Hibs, was it 2 years ago now, this summer? He was the best. Maybe. I can't remember. He was the best player on the pitch.
Yeah, he was excellent.
And he was 18-year-old.
Yeah.
And then obviously he had the unfortunate double injury, but I think it shows the regard in which to hold him.
Yeah.
Both him and Charters, very similar. Dixon's a year older, but to give him a 2-year deal, obviously hopefully he's going to come back fit and raring to go in July, and it's only good news, especially with him being a local lad.
Yeah, and it maybe suggests possibly that we're not looking to target midfields and places. Maybe one new player in there, possibly. Maybe not.
I don't think we will be, to be honest.
Unless of course someone
when we go on to it later. Yeah.
If someone comes in for Callum Guy, obviously that would change things a little bit. But there you go. Possibly, maybe they'll look at some of the other younger players and getting new deals for them.
It wouldn't be a surprise if the likes of Armour, Charters, Tanner were all looked at.
I think Tanner's
maybe even Hayden.
Possibly, yeah. I'd imagine with those that Armour and Taylor would be the obvious ones to look at because both of them are really young lads and there's a chance to extend longer. Tanner's a little bit older and he's a bit more of a prize asset, so it might be a bit more of a challenge to get him tied down for another year. But hopefully we can get something sorted for him. Another bit of contract news is Morgan Feeney signed his new deal. Rumours sort of suggested this was going to happen, didn't it, Dan? We always had an inkling it was coming, but it's good news. He signed a summer contract till the summer of 2022, and I didn't understand there's an option as well, isn't there, for another year?
And I think it suggested it was in our favour. So if he does do well, it wouldn't be a surprise if that was activated come January.
Yeah, I'd imagine it's one we'd probably look to trigger pretty quickly if let's say he starts the first 15 games of the season. You'd be like, right, he's tied down, and then that's the point when you say, right, we triggered you for next year, but we want to get you on an even longer deal.
Yeah.
Get him to sign for longer. So there you go. Yeah. Next up, Dan, this is the bit that's got both of me and you excited, isn't it? It doesn't seem that long since the last game finished, but the club have finally announced, well, not finally announced, but they've announced the first set of pre-season friendlies for the summer, haven't they? I mean, last summer, it took so long to announce the friendlies, didn't it? Because of that, we didn't know when the season was going to start.
Yeah, last summer was, I think clubs were scratching around trying to...
Well, Grimsby played one friendly last summer, which tells them...
I think we ended up playing, was it Liverpool under-23s for one of ours?
Yeah, which...
just both obviously had a date. Someone knows someone. Fancy a game, that'll do.
Well, Mark Bridge-Wilkinson will probably be involved around about there.
Yeah.
So the first set have been announced. They're all against non-league clubs, which, these are the games you expect. They're basically against local sides and a few other further afield, isn't it? So you've got your Penriths, your Workingtons and your Kendalls all in there, but there's also games against Hebburn Town, Chorley and Lancaster City. Some interesting ones in there. I mean, a little bit disappointed that Penriths on a Tuesday night, because I was really looking forward to going to that one, but probably won't make that now. I'd imagine you'll be there, won't you?
Yeah, I should be through for that one. But no, I'm looking at the date of that 13th. Is that a little bit late or?
I think it's early. Sorry, late. Sorry, you're right. Exactly right. Yes, late.
I would have maybe expected one on the 10th.
I wonder. Sometimes maybe they try not to play it around the Euros.
Finals,
yeah. But then the finals on the Sunday, isn't it? So it doesn't necessarily affect it. But yeah, you do wonder maybe if there's one more in there potentially they might announce. But
I mean, the glaring thing is obviously it's all non-league, and Saturdays 24th and 31st don't have games yet. I would imagine there will be games against bigger and better opposition. I mean, Chris Beach already sort of said there was irons in the fire for a couple of decent games.
Look forward to Blackpool and Fleetwood being announced then. Probably.
Yeah,
maybe Middlesbrough if we're lucky.
Yeah, Middlesbrough reserves always used to be, didn't it?
Every
but
season.
I think the team who've come out with it a little bit harshly are probably Hebburn Town.
Yeah,
because this was agreed as part of Kedwin Scott coming, and to play them on the same day we're playing Workington, it's a little bit harsh.
I mean, Workington is the stronger team, and you'd imagine we're likely to send the stronger side. Or...
Well, wait, no. Following the announcement midweek of the new non-league setup, Workington and Hebburn are both at the same level.
Interesting that.
They play one's in the West Division, one's in the East Division.
What you would say there is that Workington have been pretty much gunning on for promotion last couple of seasons. Yeah. Hebburn have jumped up a league.
Yeah, Hebburn have moved upwards. So.
Yeah, so I'd imagine they're probably going to split the squad down the middle. Maybe they'll send a slightly stronger one to Workington, possibly. I don't know. But it's hard to tell on that one. It's a shame because I would have loved to have gone to Hebburn and to Workington. I'm going to have to probably pick one of the two. And most likely I'm going to pick Workington because I can go to see the family for the weekend. So bit of a frustrating with that one.
Yeah. And I would say we'll probably see the same again with Chorley and Kendall being on Tuesday and Wednesday.
Yeah, you'd think so.
Those who play against Chorley will be on the bench against Kendall and vice versa, you would expect.
You imagine Chris Beach is going to walk to the Chorley game, isn't he? You'd think. Cause it's interesting. It's just like when, is it Neil Warnock? Every club he goes there, he always arranges friendlies down in Devon and Cornwall, doesn't he?
Yeah.
That's where he actually lives. People don't necessarily realise that. Yeah. And I think when he was at, was at Middlesbrough, you basically arrange the players to come and have a big barbecue or something like that. Of his, this is cooking or something.
Yeah.
Brilliant stuff.
So obviously these are all subject to fans being allowed. I would like to think they are by then. If you were going to pick one, Chorley's a great little proper non-league ground, Chorley.
Yeah, it is.
I went there for a match when I was on a course in Wigan once, and it was a proper little ground. And again, the following week, Lancaster City. You can all see Lancaster's ground from the train station. It's a cracking little non-league ground, and
the Giant Axe, one of the best.
The Giant
names.
Axe, one of the best names. Yeah.
I think the only one that's better is it down in Lewes, the Dripping Pan. Yeah, an amazing name for it.
Yeah.
But I mean, I got some interesting facts for you about the friendlies. Dan, there's only a handful here, but we've never actually played Chorley or Hebburn before in either a friendly or a competitive fixture. That surprised me. I genuinely thought we would have played Chorley at some point, at the very least, but we've never played. Surprised that. And we've never played Bamber Bridge. I thought we'd played Bamber Bridge at some point, but I've been looking through. I've got these facts, I should say, from Jeff Jackson's excellent Carlisle Programmes website, which has a list of all the friendlies we played since, I think, 1923 or something like that. So, a little bit of a surprise, that. Did
we not play Hebburn Railroll once?
It's not listed down as one of the things, so unless it's just the second end of the name on the site, there's no link to Hebburn there. Hebburn is, of course, the hometown of Brendan Foster, the founder of the Great North Run. There's a good fact for you. It's the first time we've played Lancaster City since July 2004. And when we played them that summer, we were a conference side and they were a conference north side. It's mad, that, isn't it? We won that game 3-2. The first time we actually played them was back in 1931. We actually lost that game 5-1 in a pre-season friendly. And they were a non-league side and we were a football league side by then. So a little bit of a surprise, that. It's the 47th time we'll be playing Workington in a friendly since 1923. We haven't played any other side as many times as Workington. Who do you reckon the second most common side we've played?
Penrith will be up there. I wonder if Gateshead's up there.
Neither of them two. I'll give you a clue.
Kendall?
It's a side we haven't actually played in front of a crowd since 2007.
Let me have a little think.
Relatively local.
I will guess we're Queen of the South.
Yes, Queen of the South.
Yeah, it just came to me there.
32 times we played Queen of the South. We used to play them like every season back in like the 30s and 40s and stuff like that.
During, I think it was the 80s and 90s, there was a bit of a border TV cup with Berwick and Stranraer. When you actually, if you pinned all those teams on a map, there's absolutely, Stranraer to Berwick's a ridiculous journey. But
yeah, exactly. It's a weird one, isn't it? So there you go. I always kind of think it's a shame we don't play Queen of South more often. I know you're not fussed on them, but
I don't mind going up to watch a Queen of the South game now and again. I went to watch their playoff the other year when they hammered Montrose 5-0 when Stephen Dobby absolutely ripped them apart in the first half, and it was a good little afternoon out.
Yeah, I think the next most common after Queen of South, I think Barrow and Kendall are roundabout. And Penrith basically. It's sort of a fight between those ones really, but there you go. So that's the pre-season friendlies summed up. Moving on next, it's sort of a news bit. Well, it's sort of moving on from news, but it's a little bit of a roundup from the fans forum. So as we discussed on last week's show, there was a director and owners fans forum took place at Brunton Park this week via live stream. You, Dan, were there with Matt Spooner and Simon Clarkson handling the questions, and I think it's fair to say, Dan, for once, there was actually some quite interesting revelations came out this evening, wasn't there?
Yeah, it was quite interesting. Obviously, we invited questions prior. I spent a couple of hours sort of grouping them together so that, there was a bit of continuity to the question asking. It was impossible to ask every question on the night. We'll come on to that at the end of this little bit. Yeah. And we found that one or two answers sort of covered questions that were about to be asked. But we tried our best, and obviously, as we're about to mention, there is a second forum coming up to cover those that didn't get asked. But,
indeed.
Some of the bits that came out were definitely worth talking about.
Yeah, well, let's start up then. The first one, is the big one for me, was the discussion of succession /ownership. United co-owner John Nixon, he revealed for the first time that there was definitely a succession plan with EWM that got quite far, didn't it, down the line? But unfortunately, that's when COVID struck. And then, as a result of COVID, EWM subsequently collapsed as an organisation, didn't it? And the new company that owns Carl United's debt and also is involved in sort of reviving parts of the EWM brand, PurePay, they're now in the process of getting a high street presence back up for all those bits of EWM that they own. I think it's things like Peacocks, isn't it?
Yeah, Bon Marsh and
Megan describes Peacocks as the company that just will not die because she works in retail, my missus, and she's saying like just doesn't understand who actually shops there. It baffles her. But yeah, so they're in the process of getting that back in stable. And I think the talk is that, from what Nixon was saying, is that PurePay will come back once that's sorted and restart that process. And it's not a simple process, is it? That's what Nixon was making very clear.
I think the problem that PurePay would have at present is because they're essentially a dormant company just sort of starting up, and to pass the EFL owners test, you wouldn't get very far with a dormant company that hasn't done anything. I think once, obviously the high street's reopening post-pandemic and that, and once they start getting, it could be that the wheels will turn again, and I imagine the paperwork will be changed from mentions of EWM everywhere to PurePay Retail Limited.
Yeah. So it's an interesting one, wasn't it? It's interesting when you read some of the comments on Twitter. There was the usual angry reaction. I, to be honest, I think a lot of those people didn't really read or listen properly. Read the stuff coming up on Twitter or listen. I don't think they were listening. They were just in their usual focused sort of attitude to it. It's all negative. It's all bad. Whatever they're saying is lies. If you listen to what they said, there's some encouraging stuff. It's not perfect, and there's still a long way to go. But it does suggest that there's a decent, secure future for the football club going forward. I don't know what your thoughts were, Dan. You were there, and obviously you were listening to it, but it sounded okay to me.
Yeah, it's obviously the devil will be in the detail. Yeah. I know when the A&B shares were mentioned that the trust reps in the room weren't particularly happy, I would suggest.
More than them in a
minute. But I think there's a lot more detail will need to come out so that we as a fan base know exactly what is happening, because, I don't want to go on too long, but the likes of Andrew Jenkins has converted a lot of debt into B shares, and the suggestion seemed to be that the B shares may possibly become A shares in time. Yeah. I'm no expert on this at all, but that seemed to be the suggestion. I'm sure people who are far more qualified in these matters can put us right, but it'll be very interesting to see how the trust approach it, because they have a duty to their membership to, who's the big question there, as always with the trust, is will they be asked to reduce their holding, which has to go through the members. So we will see.
We will see indeed. Well, let's move on to the next point then, Dan. iFollow. As we already sort of knew, we've had the updates from Club over the last few weeks, and iFollow's had a real big positive impact for the club this season in terms of the money it's generated, in terms of our stats. We're right up there for the paid subscriptions in League Two.
I think we were second in the home standings and seventh in the away, which is...
Yeah. A lot of clubs have given away free passes their season tickets, but we've given away a few free passes as well. As you benefit from.
Well, I've been one,
But it's just generally been a really good success. Now, we still obviously don't know what's going to happen in terms of fans being allowed to games next season. One thing that was mentioned, I think it was by Nixon actually, is that they're looking at the possibility maybe whether games could be beamed back to Brunton Park and fans could pay maybe a small fee to go and watch it in the Sporting Inn or in Fox's or in the Sunset Suite. Obviously, I should say Murphy's Bar, as it should be called for the Sporting Inn.
Well, not quite yet. It's not done yet.
No, not sorted yet, but it will be sorted in the near future. But yeah, I just, it was an interesting one that whether they're looking to. I mean, obviously, eye level weight, I wouldn't go along, but for fans who want to sit with other fans and have a drink and watch the game, it might be a good alternative potentially. if they're not allowed to go to away games next season.
Yeah, I think we'll get a lot of this come out when the EFL normally have their end of season meeting once all the playoffs are completed and teams formally get accepted into divisions and whatnot. Once all this has happened, I would imagine iFollow will be one of the main talking points this year. A lot of it will hinge on the 3 p.m. Saturday stuff, which is sort of, it's been let off for a year because of COVID and whatnot. But
it's seen as sacrosanct, isn't it, basically?
Yeah, I think if ever there was a time when the 3 p.m. might finally go, it is now. Mm-hmm. Because, to be honest, the people who would watch Premier League games in town don't really have much interest in going to Brunton Park anyway. So
yeah,
and if you're a Carlisle fan and you're more bothered because it's Leeds versus Crystal Palace at 3 o'clock uptown, are you really a Carlisle fan?
That's very true. And to be honest, it might actually make some EFL clubs start to be a bit, I don't know, to challenge themselves to make it more attractive to come down and watch games at their ground, wouldn't it?
Yeah, definitely.
That's the hope. But there you go. Next one up. This was an interesting one, wasn't it? The Reece Bennett contract situation. Now, people who don't aware of this, Reece Bennett was on Twitch, which is his streaming platform where he plays on computer games. It's Football Manager he plays mostly, isn't it? Bit of Fortnite as well. And he was on there and he made some I think a fan asked him about his contract offer, and he made some comments that I don't think he quite used the word disgraceful, but was it disrespectful or something? I can't remember the exact word he used, but he basically suggested that the offer he's been made is less than he's currently been on at the club. He also let loose that his contract actually ended last week. So most contracts, people are aware, football contracts run till the end of June. Yeah. If you don't get tied down to another club, you get a 1 month severance pay, don't you? Basically,
yeah,
it's effectively
July,
end of July,
basically, yeah,
end of July, effectively.
So I think they actually get the last payment in mid August.
Yeah,
when the July one finishes.
Something like that, yeah. Now he signed a contract, obviously, that only took him up to that point, and he would have had to sign a new deal actually if we'd gone into the playoffs. Yeah, he wasn't very happy. David Holdsworth asked a question about this. He didn't really pull any punches, although he gave a little bit of a mixed message, didn't he? He basically said that he described Bennett as a really good guy, but then he sort of criticised him for doing this and speaking publicly about it. He basically said we keep our contract negotiations confidential.
I think the suggestion was you and your agent were happy with his deal to sign it, so what are you whinging about?
Yeah. And I think Holdsworth pointed out, this was a really good deal for the club, really good for us. And I have to admit, as someone who... I'm very sort of left-wing in my thinking, I'll be honest with you. I like to see people sort of protected in terms of their contracts and stuff. I wouldn't be particularly comfortable if as a club we're starting to think, let's start offering deals that only run till the very end of the season, till May. I think as a club, if we start doing that, I'm not overly impressed. If it's a one-off, fair enough, but... Yeah,
it's a dodgy road to go down.
It's a very dodgy road to go down, because then what happens if a player turns around and says, you get to the playoffs, but then this player gets an offer from a championship club and goes, I'm not going to sign a new deal, I might get injured.
Yeah.
This championship club's offering me a deal for next season.
It used to happen in the League of Ireland, the players used to sign 9-month contracts, and obviously the off-season they didn't play, and it actually got that bad that people knew what the score would be in the last game of every game.
Yeah.
Because... allegedly, people were making money to pay for their 3 months. So
I wouldn't blame them, would you? Really, it's a weird one, isn't it? But if clubs take the mickey out of them, so there you go. The bit that I really did like was he said people shouldn't complain about contracts they were happy to sign and discuss new contract offers with fans while playing Space Invaders. I'm pretty sure your lad would call David Holdsworth a bit of a noob for a comment like that, wouldn't he?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's obvious that David doesn't play Football Manager, does he? So
he must be still on his Amiga or his Spectrum or Commodore 64 or something like that. He's played on, but there you go. So, but actually, I think, to be honest, a lot of the other stuff Holdsworth said was actually not too bad. I know we sometimes come across as not his biggest fan, but I think most of what he said actually was pretty straigtraightforward and down the line, to be fair on this. So. I know you were there, Dan. So
to be honest, I think he probably surprised a couple of folk. I saw a couple of people mention on both the forum and Twitter that they were pleasantly surprised. So
Well, there you go. Interesting revelation that we're going to be talking to a striker this week, aren't we? So interesting to see what that is. To me, that suggests that's maybe not someone who's just been released, but maybe possibly someone who's in negotiations for a contract somewhere else. And we've said, well, we can make you an offer, and maybe he wants to speak to us before he thinks about signing a new deal. That's just me putting it out there. I don't know. I have no idea who the striker is. No idea at all.
I'm actually live from a bush in the car park, and I've not seen any strikers coming in 48 hours. So.
There you go. There you go. Yeah, people think you're joking there, but genuinely you're down there all the time. So there you go.
Think things we do for the fans to find out what's happening.
Indeed. Fans first.
Yeah.
Final bit, Dan. I'm going to let you do this bit because it was your question. Cal United official supporters club were described as being about as relevant as a dead otter. So you said this, so take it away.
Well, I've basically, it's up to them to prove me wrong. You know, I suggested that they were. I'm trying to think of the best words to describe it. Too quiet for the members. You know, they've only got what 400 members at present, roughly. You know, they don't speak to the fans enough. Yeah, they get the regular newsletter. I couldn't think of the word, but you know, I've noticed they've cancelled a recent fans where fans can go and ask them stuff. I understand that their reps on the two boards. There is a degree of they can't talk about a lot of stuff. I understand that, you know, because it's a lot of it can be commercially sensitive and that. But I feel that they don't use enough energy to tell us, and there seems to be, you know, they've got a big diversity push at the moment, which yes, there is a place for it, but it seems to be the be all and end all, you know, and. I'll be honest, the supporters' trust is there to have fans on the board to tell the fans what's going on. Do they do that? Not really for me, you know. I would hope they would take my comments on board and strive to sort of, you know, try and become something better, because at the moment, the average Carlisle United fan doesn't give a about them. I apologise for the language, but, you know, unfortunately, they own a quarter of the club, roughly. But they don't really represent. I mean, 400 members is roughly a tenth of an average crowd the other season.
I mean, you look at someone like Exeter City, who actually own their club, and how many members have they got in their trust? I'm sure it's a lot more than 400.
Yeah.
At the very least. For me, they've got a bit of a legacy problem, and I totally understand this. There's a lot of new people involved there now, and they're not necessarily the people who were involved originally. But for me, they've got to somehow try and shake that off. They've got to try and project this new image. I think communications-wise, you're absolutely right. I'm a communications professional. That's my job. There's areas where they could really strongly improve in that. They really could. And I think you're right about the newsletter. It all feels a little bit mid-90s, early noughties supporters club sort of thing.
I think the last one I saw, there was the team and what had happened in the match that day, a copy of their recent News and Star column, and if they've had a board meeting, there's a little bit, but there's no meat on the bones, if you know what I mean.
For me, you don't need to put the stuff about the match.
No.
Fans can find that anywhere. You can go to the official website and find that if you really
I think they were emailing it at 5 p.m. when people are walking home from a match usually at that time. So they know what's happened in the match.
Yeah, it's about timing, it's about your content, stuff like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, just for me, they've got a real challenge to shake off that shackles, because a lot of people still don't like them for what happened in the mid-noughties. You can't hide from that. What happened with Story and Courtney and that piece of land or whatever, they might think it was the right thing to do. But if you ask the general, larger, wider fan base, I think they didn't feel it was right.
When you look at the AGM every year, there's approximately 50 or 60 people vote on any matters that need voted on. And that's telling, because 50 or 60 people is about 1.5% of a Brunton Park crowd.
Yeah.
So
it's not much, is it really? And I applaud them for the fact that they're getting a few younger people involved. I know the likes of Jack Oddy, who obviously listens to this podcast. He's a really good friend of ours. We know him well. They've got a challenge on their hands, but there's potentially good opportunities in the next year when fans are really desperate to go back to games to really sell it. How they do that, I'm not 100% on it, but there needs to be some way that they can shake off the shackles of their past. Because there's no doubt, we've said it before, that a lot of fans that we know and we talk to won't get involved because of what happened previously. That's why they've got a real problem on their hands.
And another problem they've had is they've rebranded a couple of times already.
Yeah.
You can only rebrand so many times.
Yeah, exactly that. Okay then, Dan, finish that bit up. Like you said, there's going to be another fans forum next week, isn't there? I think it's next Tuesday.
Yeah, Tuesday at 5:30. Myself, Matt and Simon are going back. Media team are going to stream it on YouTube. I think Nigel Clibbins will definitely be there. One of the Trust fellas will be there. I'm not sure who else. Basically, there was that many, I think there was 60 or 70 questions came through. And we got through about half of them in the just over 2 hours we were on. I mean, some of them can be grouped together. There was 6 very similar ones on, for instance, I Follow. Mm-hmm. But, you know, there was still some good questions that haven't been answered, especially a couple of ones for the Trust, actually. And, you know, it was actually the club who said, you know, if you guys are available, bring your questions again and we'll get them done so that those that didn't get their questions asked can get them done.
Well, I think a few people might have seen Nigel's comments at the very end on that last question that you had to get in. It shows the club are not hiding. They'll answer questions. Send the questions in because you're the one in control of the questions. You, Dan, Matt and Matt Simon.
And anyone in any doubt, I was pretty much the only person who saw the questions prior to it.
Yeah.
Till I sorted the document and passed it on to my other 2 hosts, and you know the club have no access to the email it goes to, so there's no worries on that score at all.
Yeah. Well, I hope you asked my question about the Tranmere fan park because I want.
Yes, I will do.
Because I was bugging you, wasn't I?
Yeah.
It shows there's no favouritism because I was saying to Dan on that, get my question asked, and they didn't get it in time. So there you go. All right, then let's move on then, Dan. The last part of the first half, because that's gone on a bit longer than I thought it would.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the League One and League Two retain list. Obviously, as this is the last regular episode we are going to do before our summer break, we're going to take a quick look down the release lists of all those clubs in League One and League Two who aren't involved in the playoffs. And what we're going to do is we're going to pick out some sort of targets that United might want to look at over the summer. First up, we'll start off with the Rochdale and Bradford list. I'm only joking because they're the obvious ones to go for because they're the 2 clubs that we also seem to sign players from. Bradford and Rochdale obviously being Beach's last club. But in all seriousness, we think it's unlikely United will target midfielders, don't we? We think it's defenders and attackers probably.
Yeah, if you look at midfielders, we've got the Riley, Mellish, Guy, Divine, Charters, Dickinson can play in there. You know, a couple
Leslie.
a couple of the defenders can push up. So, you know, I think the midfield area is pretty well stocked. Goalkeeping probably depends on what happens with Paul Farman.
Yeah.
You know, we'll be happy to go with just Norman and Young Breeze as a backup, and if something happens, we can bring a loanee in. You know.
One of those ones, isn't it? Well, let's focus then on the defenders first, Dan. There's only a few I've put in here. I just put this in because I've obviously we've seen with Bennett, it looks like he's probably not going to sign. I'm not sure they'll want to go into the season with 3 centre-backs, potentially.
Those being Hayden, McDonald and Feeney at the moment.
Yes, because we know with Feeney, he does have to prove his fitness. Because I know the injury he picked up when he signed for us could have happened to anyone. It's a broken bone, you know, that's one of those ones that just happens. But he has had a few injuries before that, hasn't he? That's why he couldn't establish himself at Sunderland, for instance. So it's one of those ones, I don't want to be going into a season with Anderton as 4th choice centre-back. I think he's shown he can do it if we play a back 3, but I'm totally unconvinced with him in a back 4 at the moment, I think. So let's have a look through some of the defenders I've picked out. You might want to drop a few more in, possibly. The first one I spotted, this is one I spotted actually when Crew's list originally came out. Eddie Nolan, experienced defender let go by Crew, started out at Blackburn, he's been at Preston and obviously Crew. He's a good player, isn't he? He's an Irish lad. He did really well when he was at Preston, and obviously he's done okay at Crewe. Only issue here is he's had a few injuries, hasn't he? I mean, he's 31. He's one of those ones who might look to move back to Ireland, possibly. Do you think he's one maybe potentially could be a good target?
Possibly. We could say that about all of them on the list, to be honest. These are just our opinions. I'm sure Chris Breach will have his own ideas and whatnot. There is some decent players kicking about. Who else have we got on this list here? Scott Wootton. He's always a player I've quite liked at Plymouth, wasn't he? He's from Birkenhead originally, so he's not a lad from down south. So you wonder if he might, having spent his time at Plymouth now, want to move back up north. And you'd imagine he's probably not going to get a League One club, probably. So, I mean, he's been at Tranmere before, so whether he'd go back there again, I don't know. But if he moved back to the northwest, he started out at Man United originally, didn't he? I think.
Well, he was in Liverpool's youth setup, and then he went to Man United youth setup. He's been.
He was at Leeds for a bit, wasn't he?
Yeah, he's been on loan at Wigan this season actually as well.
Yeah.
So you wonder if maybe they might go back for him possibly. But he's one. He's 29. He's a good age. Wouldn't be a bad signing for me. So there, he's another one. Looking down through the list, who else have we got here? I put him in because he's at Bradford. He's an obvious target. But Anthony O'Connor, not a bad defender. I don't think he's. Bradford is having a clear out basically on this. Basically freshening things up. But he's one that I've always quite liked in the past. He's possibly experienced head that we could have in there. He's again at a good age. He's 28 years old. Like Nolan, he started out at Blackburn actually, funny enough, and he's had his time at Plymouth, Burton, and he's at Aberdeen for a while, wasn't he? Actually, for a couple of seasons.
Yeah.
So maybe one to look at. It's a difficult one with defenders, isn't it? Because as you've said, potentially, if Feeney starts the season well, McDonald's shown himself an adequate backup.
Yeah.
Does he really want to come in, this player, as a fourth choice potentially?
That's a problem, isn't it? I just can't see us bringing in
It depends whether Hayden stays, doesn't it? That's one of the issues as well. But then again, you can't just always look and say we're going to bring a player in as backup. You also want to look and say I want to bring in a better player who's actually going to challenge, and push on the players who are there. And if that means that Hayden drops out of the team because the player we bring in is better, then so be it. That's the way we've got to look as well. We've got to be ambitious. We can't just think bringing in players there just to fill spaces and be backup. That's the key thing, isn't it? Lewis Alessandri, you'd probably would have looked at and thought he can be a backup, a squad player, but actually he played most of the games last season.
Yeah.
So it goes to show sometimes, doesn't it? So defensively wise, they're the ones I picked out. Alan Sheehan as well, actually, is another one I picked out. Good experienced head. You can play left back as well, can't he? Great on set pieces. Not played as much as I know he's been at Northampton. You've got Matey supporting that front, and I'm not sure how he's been getting on there this season, but he's one I've always really liked as well.
Yeah, definitely in the more experience. He must be mid-30s by now, must he?
34 now, I think.
Yeah. But like say, obviously we assume Bennett isn't staying, so it'll be interesting to see. I mean, we could end up taking, a loan player from an academy or something.
It's interesting because Beach doesn't seem that keen on loan players as much as some past managers. Coyote was an obvious one because he's a long-term player we've liked and we had him before. Yeah,
we had him 18 months really, didn't we?
I mean, bar him, we had Walker for the second half of the season, didn't we? And didn't really use him. So
the likes of Mali and Obiero didn't really feature, did they?
No, and obviously keeper-wise, that was just Dewhurst was just to fill a space, wasn't he? Really?
Yeah.
There you go. Well, that's pretty much covered defenders. I don't think there's much else to pick out there. Attackers, we picked a fair few out here, I think. You picked a few. I've dropped a few more in.
Yeah.
Should we go through them one by one? I'll let you start off. I think the first one up, I think he's one I can really see us targeting him, this lad.
One I've seen mentioned by a couple of people on Twitter, Harvey Saunders, released by Fleetwood. He's done well in loan spells at Darlington and Hartlepool. He scored against us. Well, he didn't really because it was in the trophy, but he's at a good age. He's at the sort of age that Chris Beach likes to pick up players, isn't he?
He's a good mobile player. The player's probably not been quite moulded into what his final position is yet, is he? Probably still needs a bit of fine tuning.
I think Fleetwood was probably not the best place for him because obviously the likes of Madden and Evans were playing.
Yeah, Wes Burns, people like that.
Yeah. But I'd be very surprised if he's one we certainly have a look at, you know.
Yeah, looking at his record, he's only managed 3 goals in 27 games for Fleetwood, but to be fair, a lot of that
is off the bench, isn't it?
Yeah, he's off the bench, exactly, so it's not quite the same. But
you've put in obvious one here, really, Conor McElhenney. He's not been released by Oldham, but he's in contract talks. Like you've put in our notes, it'd be lovely to sneak in and take him.
Well, I remember last summer I said he was going to be one of the danger men this season in League Two. I thought he was a really good signing for Oldham. Yeah. I remember a certain co-presenter, not you, I should say, dismissed that and said, I don't think he's actually that good. He went and scored against us, didn't he? Yeah, he's a good player. He's a good little player. He can play wide as well, which means he's useful. He can play a few positions. I genuinely love to see us nick him. I think you'd love to see us nick him off curl, wouldn't you? That's
yeah.
It'd make your day, that. But I genuinely think if we're going to be ambitious, we should not just look at players who've been released, but look at those who are in negotiations with clubs and try and nick them under their noses. That's what I'd love to see us do with a couple of players.
The next one's a player that's he's always sort of semi being mentioned by our fans. Lee Novak, experienced head, still scored decent goals for Bradford. He's a north-east lad, good location, but is he too similar to Alessandra in the experienced role?
Yeah, you probably get you more goals than Alessandra potentially.
Yeah.
But when I say that, he managed only 8 goals last season in 23 games for Bradford, so not really much better ratio than Alessandra, is it, in that sense?
Yeah.
Much better record for Scunthorpe, 23 goals in 94 games, and prior to that, obviously, Birmingham, he wasn't really played much as a central striker, he played more out wide, didn't he?
Yeah.
But I mean, I'm looking at his record for Chesterfield, 14 goals in 35 games. So when you get him in a right team, he's going to score goals for fun, isn't he? Really, Gateshead where he really started out. So.
And another obvious one is former Carlisle player Andy Cook.
Yeah, I mean, for me, every season people always link us with players he used to play for us down there, and it gets ridiculous at times. Yeah. He, of all the ones who are listed, he's the only one to look out and say to me, "Yep, I'd go for him." And that's just because, well, he didn't really play for us.
He didn't really play for us.
Never played the first team game. But he's a good experienced striker now. He scored goals wherever he's been. He's maybe not been quite as prolific at the league level yet, but he's still scored a fair few goals, and he's a big physical nuisance. He puts himself about, wins a fair bit in the air. I think Beach might look at him and think he's a perfect player for us. The only problem there is that you'd imagine Bradford might come back in for him possibly. Yeah. But I would love to see us have a go for him, because I think he would have a point to prove, and I think he'd enjoy playing. I mean, with the amount of chances we create as well, a player like him should score a hatful, really, shouldn't they?
Yeah.
Think, in the style.
I'm going to group the next 3 together because they're decent names, but probably unlikely, I would say. We've got Daniel Powell, decent pedigree. You say he looks a tad overweight.
Well, he always looks a bit chunky whenever I've seen him played. He's big, tall. He's about 6'2", 6'3". He plays more out wide more often, but he's always been a good, dangerous player against us. Yeah. But he always looks like he's carrying a bit. He doesn't look like he's in the best shape. I might be wrong there. It might just be the way he is, but that's impressionable.
We've got Tom Pope on the list, the Twitter warrior himself, but I think his career's winding down, isn't it? Yeah. You know, it wouldn't be a surprise if he went to a Notts County or a Chesterfield type team.
What you think with him is he's based down in Stoke. It's his hometown.
Yeah.
At the age of 35, is he going to move all the way up to Carlisle potentially, or want to travel up to Carlisle every week for games? I just can't see it.
No.
I mean, it'd be a great sign. I genuinely think it'd be a good sign, especially for young players to learn from. But like you said, I imagine a Notts County or Chesterfield. Maybe if they don't go up a Stockport, somewhere like that.
Yeah, possibly. Yeah. And the other one we've put is Kevin Van Veen, who's at Scunthorpe. He's a player I quite like, but I think he's had a little bit of injury problems in the last couple of years.
Yeah. He turned down a deal, didn't he, at Scunthorpe? He was offered a new one in January, I think.
Yeah.
He turned it down. But I'd imagine as well he's probably not going to be cheap. I'd imagine he's going to demand a fairly decent wage, you'd think.
It wouldn't be a surprise if he went back to Holland either, would it?
Yeah, possibly. Maybe go to second division level right about there. Possibly. The next few, I mean, I've put these in. I mean, one of them's a little bit of a joke. Is another former player, Josh Morris. Now, my only issue with him is that he's probably a bit too similar to Brendan Dickinson, but he's a good technical player, great set pieces, chips in with a few goals. if Dickinson wanted to move on potentially, maybe, or move back down south, I'd have a look at Morris. I think he'd be a really good player for us potentially. But again, he's one who probably wants a big wage. You'd imagine he might stay at League One level. You'd think maybe a Shrewsbury or someone like that he might go to possibly.
Next, you've got James Wilson from Salford. Worth a look.
I mean, yeah, it's an interesting one, isn't it? Because we know he was probably on big wages at Salford. We know they took him on thinking he could be the star for them. Hasn't really quite worked out, has it really? He's had quite a few injury issues there. His injury record might put people off, and that might mean he might not be able to get the wage he wants, possibly.
He's at a crossroads in his career because he's 25-year-old.
Yeah.
You know, it's make or break time, you know.
Well, one thing that might work in our favour if we did sort of want to show an interest in him, well, he would have been a teammate of Joe Riley.
I was going to say, he'll know Joe Riley, won't he? Definitely.
For definite, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So it's one of those ones where you wonder maybe if we could potentially offer him somewhere. He might want to stay at Rochdale or somewhere down that way. But,
yeah. Rochdale or Oldham or something. Or...
Imagine Beach might be aware of him as well. I might say to him, look, come up here and let's rebuild your career. Do a 1-year deal. You know, if it doesn't work out, you know, it wouldn't have worked out anywhere else potentially. So come up here. We'll give you a chance to show what you can do. That's just a name for it out there. I imagine the wages might put us off.
Yeah.
He might turn up at somewhere like a Wigan maybe or somewhere like that possibly. The next one I put in is one I put in because I know that we were not far off signing him. I think possibly even last summer. He's Frank Nouble. He's been released by Plymouth. I know he went back on loan to Colchester, didn't he, at the end of the season. He's a little bit younger than Jabba was when we signed him, but I have a bit of a Jabba feel about him. I don't know what it is. He's a player who's maybe not scored that many at some clubs, but he could come up and be that experienced, big sort of battering ram up there with a little bit of pace about him. I think if we could convince him to come, it's a big move to come all the way up, but he's a bit younger than Jabba, so he's maybe not as tied down. I think he could have a big impact.
I just think it's the location with him. You look at his clubs, Colchester, Plymouth, Newport, Southend, Gillingham, Ipswich. You know, he's been at Coventry and Wolves, and he had a couple of loans at Barnsley back in the day. But
I think he's one we'd probably have to offer a 2-year deal if we wanted to give him a bit of protection. But he's one I do know that Beach was keen on in the past.
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting to see whether they do potentially go back in for him. And then the last one I've put in, we haven't really dipped too much into the Championship, but he's one that stood out to me, is Louis Maltz. He's been let go by Preston. He's one we targeted back in his Stoke days, didn't we? I think we tried to get him on loan, possibly.
Yeah.
Was that under Kavanagh, maybe, even? It was round about then, at least, anyway, I think.
Yeah.
It's not quite worked out at Championship level. He might get a bit of interest from League One clubs, but we show a bit of ambition, wouldn't he, to go for a player like him, potentially bring him in and say, you're our main man. We want to... Because Coyotes basically was signed as our main man in the summer. We didn't really use him as central striker, but we need to bring someone in, really, don't we, to pin down that central striker role, because as good as Luis Alessandro has been at times in that role, if we go into another season where he's going to be our main man in the middle, that doesn't suggest ambition to try and get promoted to me. That suggests we're fairly happy where we are.
Yeah, Maltz, it didn't really happen for him at Preston, I think it's fair to say.
Yeah.
He had a cracking record at Motherwell. He scored about 50 goals, didn't he, for Motherwell?
That's why I look at it. I think Ryan Bowman, that's what I'm thinking in my head here, in terms of the similar sort of player. Went to Motherwell, did well, scored a few goals. He got a bigger move than Bowman did. Didn't quite work out, but maybe League 2 level would be a better fit.
You wonder if the likes of your Wigans and Rochdales might have a look, though?
Possibly.
I mean, I think he's from the Stoke area anyway, isn't he?
Yeah, he is from Stoke, isn't he? Yeah.
So he won't be short of...
He's moved to Motherwell before, though, hasn't he? He's moved north,
true.
So
yeah.
You never know. I mean, like I said, his record, I mean, he's been in the Championship for 3 seasons with Preston. He's only played 36 games and scored 7 goals. So he really needs to... He's 28 now. He's at his peak. He should really be trying to show what he can do. I'd love to see him show a bit of ambition and just have a go for him and see if we can sign him. I think it'd be a really good signing for us, potentially. But not sure what your thoughts on that. I think you seem to think he'd be all right.
I wouldn't say no to him, but it's all about Chris Beach and what his ideas are, isn't it?
Always is.
This is just our little quick list we've drawn up from her, and we've had a thread on the forum for the retained lists. The 4 clubs in the playoffs in League 1 and 2 don't have to do theirs yet because obviously they're still playing. And I think the only team who haven't officially given a list yet
Wigan
of the other 40.
But they've got their administration issues to sort out. Haven't they?
Yeah,
That's one of the
so
things they've got
know,
at the moment.
they could be, paying players off and all sorts. So.
Yeah. There you go. Right, well, we're going to take a short break, and then what we're going to do is we're going to do our little player review bit. We're going to bash through that quickly. It's not going to be as long as second half, I think, this week, because we've gone on quite a bit in the first half, it's fair to say. But we'll be back shortly, and we'll go through those bits, and, of course, the X-Files. So we'll be back in just a minute.
Hi, this is George Tanner. You are listening to the Brunton Bugle.
And we're back for part 2 of this final proper episode of the season of the Brunton Bugle. So, Dan, what we're going to do is we're going to go back through the squad of 2021.
We're going to sort of do about 30 seconds on each, aren't we?
Yeah, we're going to bash through. Maybe some of them we'll do short. Maybe we'll go a little bit more into some of the others. But basically, we're covering through players who've made at least 10 appearances for the Blues this season. That's including League and Cup. So Taylor Charters just sneaks into that 10. Whereas Magnus Norman, obviously, he only played a handful of games, so he doesn't actually get into it.
Yeah.
And plays like Josh Dixon as well. So obviously, we're not looking at the young lads who've been released, because what's the point? We can't tell you anything about them, essentially, because they didn't play. So let's go through sort of position by position. Dan, first up, Paul Farman. He's one who, I suppose, we signed last summer, and we sort of had okay expectations of him, but I think he's overachieved in what I expected to see from him as a keeper. I mean, we've seen him play a few times and before he signed, and he looked okay, but I didn't realise just how good he was at kicking a ball, for instance. And
his kick's the main thing, isn't it?
Yeah, it's kicking, and also how mobile he is as well. He's quick on his feet. He's very light-footed, very vocal, light-footed, decent shot stopper. Has
chucks in the odd mistake though, doesn't he?
Yeah, the odd brain fart, but we can accept that.
Orient game, was it?
He's eccentric in that sense. I think he's generally been a really good signing, and I really do hope he's been offered a decent deal to stay, because I think, as much as people say, we could just stick with Norman, I haven't seen enough of Norman yet to be convinced about him as a first choice keeper from the games he's played in. And Norman's not kept a clean sheet yet. That should be noted. Broke the clean sheet record, obviously. Well, not clean sheet record, but it was the best clean sheet record since Kieran Westwood in 2008. That's something to hang his hat on as well. I just genuinely think you're taking a risk when you've got a keeper who's done that well and established himself that well, to then just bomb him out and start afresh with someone who might not fit in.
Yeah.
It's a gamble. For me, a good solid 8 out of 10 for me this season, I think.
Yeah, I think I'd agree with 8 out of 10.
So there you go. Well done, Paul. Sorry, you're 8 out of 10 for us this season. Moving on to defence, starting off with the fullbacks. George Tanner. We're big fans of George, aren't we? I think.
Yeah.
It's fair to say he has had a pretty decent season, hasn't he?
Yeah, I think obviously he got his injury at a bad time. Well, quite a good time for him personally, because we didn't lose that many games because of the various stops. But he gets up and down the wing. He's people forget he scored 3 goals. Yeah. He's got that knack of arriving late on the edge of the box. All his goals are quite similar.
Yeah.
And it's his first full season, and I think he'll be one of the key players next season.
Absolutely. If you can get a good full pre-season behind him again as well, get his fitness right up to scratch. I mean, that second half of the season, it was good that he had a little break, but then the problem was, as soon as he came back, 12 solid weeks of Saturday Tuesdays.
Yeah.
And he wasn't the only one it caught up on, to be fair, so you can't really have a go for that. He had some good games that spell. He had some games where he struggled a little bit, but look, despite the fact that he was out and he had those bad spells, I think he was something like 6th in terms of interceptions in the opposition half last season, which is an incredible stat for a fullback, isn't it? You'd expect your midfielders to be, right up the top there. But I think Callum Guy was 2nd in the league behind, I can't remember exactly who it was, someone Kinsella, I think, at Walsall. So that shows you what a good impact George can have going forward. Probably needs to work a little bit more defensively, but that's going to come with time. He's still a young lad. He's still, 21, 22. So, once he learns a bit more and plays a bit more football, he's going to have a real good impact. And like I said, we want to see him tied down to a longer deal. What score would you give him out of 10, Dan?
7.5.
I think I'd go with you. 8 for the first half of the season, 7 for the second.
Yeah, so 7.5, but I think there's strong potential to be 9 and upwards next season. I really do.
I think he could really be a massive player for us. He reminds me very much of Frank Simic in the way he plays and getting up and down.
Yeah, and I was a big Simic fan.
Yeah, me too. Really good player for us. So there you go, 7.5 for George. Nick Anderton, captain. bit of a stop-start season. It's a bit tougher for him in that he's had some really good competition for his position, hasn't he, in Jack Armour?
Yeah, I would sort of... We could probably do these two together because at the start of the season, Anderton was first choice and Armour was an untested backup. But the paths have sort of crossed during the season to the point where most would consider Armour first choice now with Anderton the backup. So if you had trajectories, Anderton would be high going lower, whereas Armour would be low going higher, and they're probably sort of met in the middle around the time of the break, I think would be fair to say.
Yeah, it's a tough one, isn't it? I think Nick's had some really good games for us actually this season, and there's times when Armour's come in and then done really well, but then struggled, and Nick's actually stepped up and come back into the team. I think there's a couple of games towards the end of the season I actually thought Anderton had some really excellent games, and one example is the game against Barrow. He came on, I think he played in midfield, didn't he, when he came on in that game possibly. And he came on and he made a big difference. He started winning stuff in the air and he put his foot on the ball and started playing a little bit because he can't play. His issue is he isn't the quickest, but he's not like running through treacle slow, is he? I think sometimes he just gets a little bit caught up positionally. I think there's still a good player in there, and would I be disappointed if he signed a new deal? No, I think he's still a useful player. I think I'd probably give him a 6.5 out of 10 personally. I think there was good moments, but there was also shaky moments. He wasn't quite up to the standard of some other players, but he did okay. Jack Armour, I totally agree. I think as the season went on, he got better and better. He's so good on the ball. I still don't think his final position is pinned down. I think, like you said, he could potentially, but I think you're looking 2-3 years down the line, be a centre-back as well.
Yeah.
I think he could play in midfield.
Just from his height, yeah.
He could play in midfield because he's so good on the ball.
Yeah.
For me, Jack's a 7 out of 10 for this season just because of his starting point was so low in terms of the fact he'd never played league football before, and he's done so well after a slightly shaky start. 7 out of 10 for Jack, 6.5 for Nick.
I would probably go 6 for Anderton and 7 for Armour.
Okay, well, there you go. So fairly similar on those two, aren't we? I think it's fair to say. Next up, we've got the centre-backs. Let's start with the Nintendo man himself, Reece Bennett. Interesting one, isn't it? When he came in, he was the epitome of the Rolls-Royce player, because we know that Holsworth likes to describe players like that. He looked just far too good for this level. After the COVID break, he just struggled a bit, didn't he?
Yeah. Hard one, because when he first came in, he was exceptional. He was scoring goals. He was bossing the defence. And after the break, he was sort of a shadow. Again, I think it's going to be a bit of a common theme. Certain players were before and after, or after and before, weren't they?
Yeah.
And Bennett's very much in one of these. I mean, you would put him 8 touching 9 for the first half, and probably down to 5 or 6 for the second half, to be quite honest.
Yeah, I think what you've got to account for in the second half as well is he had injuries. Not just the issue with COVID and all those games coming up, but he had a couple of injuries as well, didn't he? And we know he played through injuries in some of those games as well, which is a credit to him, to be fair. I'm sort of with you. I think I'd still give him, if I was going to give him an overall score, I'm probably going to go with a 7.5 pushing on an 8, because I think he was just so good in that initial run of 20 or so games. The 12 or so games, whatever it was after that, it wasn't quite as good. But he's still, I mean, there were some games where he did come in and he still looked good, to be fair. So I think I still give him, I'm going to go 7.5 out of 10.
I would go 7, I think.
Okay.
Sort of 8 and 6, or 7.
Yeah. Aaron Hayden up next. Again, one who probably wasn't quite as good after COVID, but I think he was still at a really high standard. I think the problem is he set himself such a high standard in his first full season, in that first half of the season, that even a slight drop-off looked... He was quite crystal clear. You could see it, couldn't you? Whereas I don't think his drop-off was quite actually as bad as Bennett's at times. I think he still looked a really good player, and I think he's a player who could easily play championship level. I think we might struggle to keep him over the summer. I hope we can get him tied down on a longer deal and make a bit more money out of him. But for me, I still think he looked a really, really good player.
Yeah, Hayden, he's settled in. He's really become an integral part of the squad. We know for a fact that certain championship clubs were watching him at one point. Let's get him tied down longer and hope he hits the ground running. I would say about 7.5 for me.
You know what? I'm going to give him an 8. I genuinely think at times this season he has been excellent. And although he had a few games where he's had stinkers, what I'd say is he never stops running those games. He doesn't hide. He doesn't hide from having the ball as well. And for a lad who's playing his first full season, that's really impressive. And I think he's not a shouty sort of leader, but he does look like a leader in the way he plays and the way he takes the ball. So I'm going to go with an 8 for Aaron. Next up, one that probably divides opinions of fans. Rod McDonald. I'm not. I think some fans are a bit harsh on him, to be honest. I think he's an all right player. I think he's a solid backup and a player you can rely on to play a good 10, 15 games in a row. For me, I like the fact that he's one who doesn't shy from the ball. He doesn't shy from it. He's quite happy to take the ball. I've seen some people accuse him when he loses the ball of running away from it. I think he's just a clever player who knows how to run into position. He's not the quickest, and he knows that, and he knows to go and cover position when he has to. I think the goal against Barrow, one that Quigley set up, I think, for Brough, that one for me is an example of where he actually did okay to actually get in a good position. A bit poor in the way he then dealt with the tackle, but that's by the by. For me, his biggest problem is he tries too often to try and pick a pass rather than just playing long ball. He needs to, I think Lummy picks it up well on commentary and says you need to get a bit of backspin on some of those long balls. He overhits them a little bit too much. He tries that perfect crossfield ball a bit too often. I think he's still a good solid player for us. I'd give him 6.5 for the season.
I think he'll probably be a backup centre back next season. 6 out of 10. Yeah, he's solid enough when called on, basically.
I mean, we've had a lot worse players over the last 3 or 4 seasons than
him. Definitely.
A lot worse.
Yeah,
I think the reaction of some fans don't know the bond sometimes when they talk about some of our players.
Definitely.
When you go on Twitter and social media, I've heard some people describe him as one of the worst defenders we've had. I mean, come on.
Not in the top 20.
I wouldn't even put him in the top 50, to be honest, of the worst defenders we've had. Genuinely, I can think of so many worse over the last 20 years. You go back to exactly 20 years ago from now, 21 years ago from now. My God. Really. I think some of the younger fans, they should have highlights from those seasons inflicted on them so they can see. Jeff Jackson's actually put some up, hasn't he, from that season? That's third shout out for Jeff this episode. He'll be chuffed as hell, won't he? He's put some up from that 99-00 season. We were not a good side back then, believe me. That's defenders cover then, Dan. So let's move on to midfield. Callum Guy, 9 out of 10. Let's move on.
Yeah.
No, genuinely, he's just been excellent. And
the only thing missing is goals.
But that's not what really he's in the team for. You got
No.
Mellish to do that.
I mean, we a lot of fans have complained about his set pieces not being on target. When the club put up his assist video, nearly all of them were set pieces. Yeah, I think they just need refined slightly.
I think basically people have got such high expectations because you score so many from them.
Yeah.
When he does a bad one, it stands out. That's the problem, isn't it?
Yeah,
I think we both agree 9 out of 10. He's been outstanding this season. Hopefully, let's get him tied down for a longer deal because he seems fairly happy here. But I'd imagine clubs will be sniffing him this summer.
Definitely.
Joe Riley, I have to say, for a player who'd never played midfield before this season, there's still flaws in his game, but he's adapted so well to that position, hasn't he, Dan?
Yeah, he's done really well. He's not played a lot of football for his age.
Yeah.
I think towards the end of the season, he tired a little bit. Slightly less effective in the last handful of games. But certainly had a decent season and I'd say a good solid 7 out of 10.
Yeah, I think I'd give him a good 7 out of 10 as well. I think the one thing I'd like to see is a few more goals from him. That's the thing that he's probably missing from his game a little bit. I think he's got the ability. I'd like to see, to be honest, I'd like to see him take a few of the direct free kicks. Because he took a few set pieces in the start of the season, I think, before Guy really pinned it down as his job. I think in the early cup games. And they look threatening. They look good set pieces. But he's barely taken any since. And it would be nice to mix it up a little bit. I mean, I'm looking at the stats here, Dan, right? So this season, Joe Riley, for us, has made 42 appearances in the league. Before he signed for us, he'd made 8 league appearances in his career. Like 5 times as many. That shows how much he's improved. And in a new position, full credit to that. So, so we both agree 7 out of 10 there. Big John Mellish. I mean, what can you say? I mean, again, he's got big flaws in his game. Of course he has. But what he's good at, he's done so well this season, hasn't he?
Yeah, I don't think anyone expected the goal return.
No.
He's not the finished article by any means. I would say Chris Beach would probably define him as a rough diamond.
Yeah.
He's still a work in progress, but he gets at least 8 out of 10, doesn't he?
He doesn't turn 24 till September.
Yeah.
And he's never played league football before he came to us. 59 appearances. Well, sorry, he's way more than 59 appearances now. But how many goals did he match last season? Something like 16, was it in the end?
Yeah.
I mean, that's an incredible return, isn't it? For
your
first full season playing in a completely new position. He hasn't come through an academy, so he's not like Joe Riley, where he's benefited potentially from playing in different positions when he's come up through that youth academy. He's always been a defender, hasn't he, when he's come up? So he's moved to this new position. He's learning it. And you could see signs towards the end of the season. He is learning. He's getting a little bit better with his short passing. He's getting into the channels and looking. I mean, there was times in those games toward the end of the season where we were dire. And he was the only one getting into the channels and thinking, I'm going to put a ball into the box here.
Yeah.
You get yourselves in there and actually have a go and try and get on the end of it. So it's not my job to, to be trying to pick you out if you're not going to make the runs and anything. So absolutely agree with you. 8 out of 10, definitely. Really good, solid first season in playing that position. More of the same next season, please. Next up, I'll let you lead with this one because he's your favourite, Dean Furman.
Yeah, Dean Furman. I think Chris Beach has admitted the former Callum guy meant Furman probably didn't feature as much as he would have liked, but I don't think he really let anyone down when he did feature. He was definitely off the pitch. A lot of as we've said several times, a lot of the squad said he was a great role model, and I think a lot of them were like, if we can be like that at his age, we'll have done well in the game. So it's a bit harsh scoring him because I know I'm going to say 6, but he could probably have been a bit higher if he played a bit more, if that makes sense.
I think I'd give him a 6 because he looked good at the start of the season, and obviously lost his place with Callum.
He had a couple of knocks as well, didn't he? So
a couple of knocks, and the influence
start
for me, for the influence he's had off the field on the likes of Riley and Wellish and co. That's a real positive thing. So 6 out of 10 for Dean Furman. Danny Devine, I mean, he's not played too many again. He's similar to Furman, played a similar number of games, but when he's played, I think he's actually looked a really good player, and he's played at fullback as well. He looked like he's a player who could fill in there as well. I'd
probably. It's quite similar to Furman in that, he didn't get in the team at the start of the season. When he did come in, when was it? Riley was injured for a little bit.
Yeah,
he did nothing wrong, and I'd probably say another solid 6.
I'd probably go a little bit higher into 6.5 because he played those 2 positions. I think he did really well on both of them, and again, he's shown he's one who's capable of doing it. I'm sure he'll be hoping to try and pin down a starting place next season because
definitely.
Because he was sort of in and out team, he didn't really get a chance to show what he could do in terms of a goal threat as well. He's not really scored much before he came to us either. But again, he's one who's shown he's more than capable at this level. So 6.5 I give him. Taylor Charters, again, mostly sub appearances, but that one start he had, he was excellent against Walsall. He looked like he'd been playing there for years. He didn't look out of place. Really good, solid first sort of full season as a professional. He's got to kick on next season. I hope he gets a few more opportunities though, because there were times where I think a lot of us were crying out for him to get at least just a run out because players were looking knackered towards the end of the season. So for me, just because he didn't play as many games, again, I'd probably give him a 6.5.
Probably 6. I don't think it's really fair to. I think he's probably one that we're being a bit harsh by giving him a score because it was mainly sub appearances. So. Yeah. But the future's bright, hopefully, for him.
Yeah. Last up in midfield, I put him in here. You could probably put him in attackers as well. Brendan Dickinson, been desperately unlucky in terms of injuries this season, hasn't he? Especially as he was just looked like he was starting to show something. And then he gets that injury late on against Stevenage in a dire game. And a game where he scored, with albeit a deflected goal.
His few appearances coincided with our bad run as well. So, I mean, it's probably harsh. I mean, he doesn't really get much more than a 5. But that's
not really a reflection on him. So much. It's more the way the team has gone.
Yeah. And, he's essentially a new signing for next season.
You'd hope, if you can start season
I know we said that when he first came back from injury, but he pretty much is, because he only played about 10 games, didn't he? So
And hopefully, if he can stay fit, we can start to see what he starts.
I'm saying 5, but there's certainly no reason why he couldn't be 7 or 8 at least. You know,
the quality's gone.
if he's
definitely.
okay.
Okay, well, let's bash through the strikers then. No, Dan. Josh Coyote. Interesting one, because comes in as a sort of target man, and we're hoping he can repeat his goal scoring form in his short spell at the end of last season. Never quite got the chance to play as much of a target man. He played more out wide. Sure, he was very adaptable, and his long throw was such a huge threat as well. For me, towards the end of the season, he dropped off a bit, and he didn't look quite as interested. I was a little bit disappointed with the way things went once he got his contract at Rotherham, especially. For me, 7.5 out of 10. I think there's definitely a really good player in there. There really is. What you probably got to take into account is he's still only 21. He's still a really young man.
I was going to go about 6, because he annoyed me at the end of the season a bit.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, there was a report that he was on his mobile at 2 o'clock. It's, you know, he should be in match day mode then.
Yeah, absolutely.
But you know, I would say Coyote. You could probably say similar for Patrick as well. Sorry to jump the list a little bit, but you know, but it'd be interesting to see if Patrick remains. You know, he's got a very big year if he has, because he's 25 now. Patrick. He's another who's at a crossroads.
Yeah, I feel for him, because he's a confidence player, isn't he?
Yeah.
His best spell in the team came when fans were allowed back at games.
Yeah.
And he was flying in those games, and you could see he really thrives off the confidence of the crowd. And when he plays well, he really drives us forward, and he's a huge threat. He's got all the ability.
But it was few and far between, sadly.
Yeah, towards the end of the season, he was, to be honest, he was like every player. He just dropped off like all of them.
Yeah.
For me, I'd still give him a good solid 7 out of 10, I think.
I'm at 6.
You're a harsh taskmaster.
I'm harsh, yeah.
Very harsh taskmaster, but there you go.
Well, my argument is, if these players had reached 7 or touching 8, we'd probably be in a playoff game tonight.
True. It's a very fair point. That's a very fair point altogether. But yeah, for me, I'd give him a 7, just because I think he's shown enough over the majority of the season to show he's a good player.
Yeah.
And I just hope when crowds come back, he really gets confidence. If he stays, of course. Because it's interesting, obviously, we mentioned before, he had an option in his contract, which the club didn't take up. They've offered him a new deal. I wonder if they've wanted to get him just tied down to a longer deal, or maybe they're hedging their bets a little bit, offering something more incentivised, maybe a lower wage, but better bonuses to try and get him to play better. You never know, do you? Next up, Luis Alessandra. Probably exceeded expectations, you could argue, with him. I think we all thought he was going to be a bit of a squad player and a useful player to come in when we needed. But he started so many games. I mean, I'm looking at the stats here. 37 games he started. He only missed, over the season, 1 game. He made 8 sub appearances in the other games he didn't play in. So 8 goals, probably more than we thought we'd get from him as well.
He probably made half a dozen as well.
Yeah, and he's a player who, when he played well, we played well.
Yeah.
And he showed he could really link play as a central striker. For me, 7.5 out of 10. I think he's done his job.
I think I'd agree with that. I mean, as we've said before, it could be that he maybe comes off the bench a little bit more in the future. You know, he's getting on now, and you know, do we sacrifice him for an out-and-out goal scorer? Possibly. But no, he's been excellent since he came in the 18 months he's been here. So. Yeah,
and I think he linked up really well towards the end of the season with Armour down the left, actually.
Yeah.
Because the Armour was learning a bit from him too, which is really good. Gimme. Oh, it looked so promising at the start of the season, didn't it? And it just, for me, we talk about Patrick as a confidence player. This is the clearest example of a player who just had a little bit of an issue with confidence, didn't he? And a bit of happiness, really, as much as anything. And anyone who follows him on Instagram will have seen over the last few days, he's back in France now, isn't he, with his family, I think. And he looks really happy, and he looks, he's doing, out playing football with a young, I don't know if it's his kid or a nephew or whatever, or something, but I've seen photos of him playing football and things like that, and he looks like he's got a smile on his face. And that seems to be Beach's influence to trigger that contract, isn't it? It's like, right, fans are going to be back next season, touch wood. And with a crowd behind him, he's a player who's going to thrive. He's going to try his tricks. He's not going to play the easy pass, is he? He's going to have a go at players. I can't really give him much more than a 6 out of 10, just because he dropped off so much. But at the start of the season, he was he gave us such a lift in the way he played. I think there's a real player in there, and he did show glimpses. He wasn't really involved that much, to be honest, for long periods of the season. He actually only ended up playing 32 games, 18 starts, 16 sub appearances. So it's tough to judge him, really.
I think he's the one who's got to show he's been worth his new deal.
Yeah.
I'm teetering between 5 and 6. I'll say 5.5.
Yeah.
On the basis he's got points to prove.
Yeah. Don't take that as just having a go, Gimme. If you happen to be listening to this, we want you to do well, and that's your encouragement. Saying
show us what you've got.
Show us what you got, because we saw in some of those early games just how good you can be.
Yeah.
But there you go. Next up, Ozzy Zanzala. I mean, if you'd asked him after his first 6 or 7 games, you'd have been lucky to get a 3 or 4.
One or 2.
But after that, he dropped off a little bit towards the season. But I think he was playing through an injury. I think we found that out in the last few games. He looked excellent, and he looked like a real player. And when he was at Accrington, he wasn't the main man, was he? He was sort of being used as a sub a lot, wasn't he? And
yeah.
This potentially, if he signs his new deal, which we hear he's likely to, he's going to be the main man potentially. He's going to be told, right, this is your chance. You're 23, 24, whatever. Go and show that you can be a main striker at this level, score a hatful of goals, and get your big move to a championship club.
Yeah.
Show what you can do. For me, I'd give him a 7.
I was just going to say, a little bit of a poor stop-start with, he came in when the club wasn't at its best, but he finished it well. He scored some goals, so 7 with, again, he's one who's got potential to push up to 8 and 9, hasn't he?
And again, he's one when the fans are back. My word, he's one who the fans will love because he's such a nuisance, and he's got a little bit of the Joe Garner about him. Not quite as snidey as Joe Garner, but he puts his elbows in, he throws himself about, and defenders hate him.
It's probably an upgrade on Olamola the season before.
Yeah, Olamola was a bit more technical, wasn't he? A bit more clever on the ball. He wasn't quite as clever in terms of being a bit niggly and players not really liking him, putting his foot in and his elbows in everywhere, was he? So hopefully Zanzala can be that, and I think he could potentially be a really good player for us. And then we've got 2 more left. We'll do Ethan Walker first. I mean, he looked potentially like he was going to be a really good player for us. Then he got that injury, came back, played a couple of games and looked pretty poor, and then finally got his chance towards the end of the season, and he looked lively in those few games, didn't he? He looked like a player could do something.
He's one I don't really want to rate because he didn't really get a chance, did he?
No.
Quite similar to Charters.
Maybe but not applied with that one, really. Maybe we say we're not going to give him a rating, but if he came back on loan next season, I wouldn't grumble. I think he's a player with...
Or if he came permanently.
Possibly. It's one of those... I still think Preston fancy him as a player, so I'd imagine there's a chance he's going to stay there.
Yeah.
And last up, poor old Gavin Riley. Bless him. What a hard-working player, but he just never quite worked out.
He was brought in, and it was a system that doesn't suit him.
Yeah, he's one of those ones I think we were never quite sure what the system was until maybe 4 or 5 games in, and once it was established, he was never really going to get a chance, was he? Because he just didn't fit in. No. A couple of games though, he got vital contributions against Port Vale where he set up Mellish's goal.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a bit of a Riley fan. I've rated him since his Queen of the South days, and he's had a bit of a bad season because he got his bad injury for Livingston, didn't he? So
yeah. For me, it's got to be a 5 out of 10 just because he just didn't have the impact.
Yeah. I think that's fair. I mean, I wish it could have been more, but it wasn't to be. So
yeah, not to be.
Yeah.
Okay, Dan, that's the player review bit done now. So let's move on to the X-Files. Not huge amounts to cover this week because it's obviously gone a bit quieter. But
well. Goals. Mark Ellis scored again, but it was in his own net this week.
Yeah.
Angelo Balanta has become a regular. And
live as we talk, Nathaniel Knight Percival has scored a goal in the playoff for Morecambe away at Tranmere, who are currently 2-1 up at half time. Fair play to that. I mean, you know what? If you get to play at League One level next season, that just sums things up, wouldn't it? Because he never looked like a League One player for us, did he? But there you go.
No.
A lot of others though to cover, isn't there?
Yeah. Well, first of all. Scott has signed for Gateshead, so he won't be coming back here pre-season.
No.
Decent move for him.
His interview just suggested it just didn't work out, and he felt he was going to get more opportunities and just didn't, and that's probably influenced his decision to sign for Gateshead rather than come back and have another go, really.
Yeah.
He probably thinks, well, as long as I get regular games, if I score for fun for Gateshead, League Two and League One clubs will come in, and even clubs like Peterborough always look and try and pinch good players from non-league, don't they?
Yeah.
So clubs like that.
Exeter boss Matt Taylor criticised Tom Parks for his physical state after lockdown last year.
He said he was unselectable, didn't he? When he came back to the play, he said I couldn't pick him because of the state he was in. And start of the season, he struggled to get in their team, and he was always quite a big, stocky lad for us, wasn't he?
Yeah.
But an interesting one.
And Neil MacDonald has been announced as assistant at Walsall to the other Matty Taylor, as in the ex-Portsmouth and Swindon, amongst others.
Sky Bet got caught out by this, didn't they, with the betting, because loads of people were lumping on it, and they thought, there's no chance he can leave Exeter. But then it turns out it was the other Matt Taylor they were talking about, and they had to pay out, I think. So,
which reminds me very much of the Simpson and Booth type thing we had.
Yeah.
Ex-players, new deals for Grandon Livesey at Chester.
Keep on going, fair play to them.
David Raven's remaining at Marine. I think he mentioned that on the radio a couple of weeks back. Darren Kelly, with his massive telly, has left his manager's job at Scarborough for an EFL coaching job. Jason Kennedy is now becoming a player coach at Spennymoor.
Yeah.
And Adam Murray is one of the favourites for the Barrow job at the moment. Be interesting to see if that happens. John Sheridan's in the betting as well there.
God, can you imagine?
Tony Craig has left Livingston, his goalkeeping coach role there. And then one that's happened off the back of the Premier League this week, the papers are starting up the Dean Henderson big summer move.
Apparently clubs abroad looking at him, as well as your likes of your Chelseas and your Spurs and a few others.
It's going to be very interesting what happens with the goalkeeping position there, because they've essentially got two number ones. So if Henderson's already sort of said, if I'm not number one, I'm going. So we may just get the windfall. So
I didn't think we would, to be honest, because I thought he'd established himself. But there you go.
A couple more. Nathan Thomas got relegated with Hamilton. I don't think he's featured too much for them this season.
Gary Dicker's in the relegation playoff, isn't he, with Kilmarnock?
Yeah. And just one player of note who got released. There is a couple others that weren't worth mentioning, but Kieran Westwood is leaving Sheff Wednesday after several years.
He's not coming back. Before anyone even suggests it, we could not afford his wages. Let's be realistic here. Lovely as it would be for him to come back for one last hurrah. I just realised, Dan, we did miss one on the goals. Another goal for Calling Higginbotham.
Oh, yes,
for Kelty.
yes.
The Kelty Heart in the play. Did they win the first playoff against?
They won 2-1. I was gutted because the last couple of years I've had... well, obviously not last year, but the years before, I had a couple of nice little wins on when Cove hammered Berwick home and away and whatnot. But Kelty were clear favourites this time, so the bookies have cottoned on to the strength of some of these teams.
Yeah, indeed. I mean, there's some very strong teams at the Lowland League and the Highland League level, even the junior level in Scotland as well.
A lot of the junior teams are actually moving over into the Highland and Lowland leagues now. So it's all change up there. But I could talk for hours about that separately.
Maybe on another episode. That's it for this week then, Dan. Thanks for joining me.
Not just for this week, for this season.
Indeed, yeah. Thank you for joining me for this season. And thank you to everyone who's been listening this season. Genuinely, it's been brilliant. We're going to do a little special episode on the United Nations of Carl United, where we'll not just look at all the players around the world who play for Carl, but look at places that people have been listening to podcasts around the world. There's no new ones this week, I should add. So we basically want to do a little episode now. We'll talk about. I mean, we've had something like 15,000 listens this season, which is absolutely incredible, and it started to go up since we launched the Facebook page recently.
Yeah,
we've picked a few more up,
we're touching. We're aiming for sort of 500 an episode now, which we're starting to reach. We've sort of been at 350, 400 quite solidly.
Yeah, for a lot of episodes.
So
it's been
spread the word about us.
Yes, definitely, and like I said, over the next few weeks, obviously.
We've got plenty in the pipeline, haven't we?
Yeah, we've got a few specials we're going to put together. We've got I am going to finally finish off your United 11. It's difficult because I'm trying to get some little commentary clips of each player. Yeah. It's taken a while to find.
Yeah.
You would not believe how long it took me to find one of the players.
We've got Fox Analytics lined up for a talk about the number side of the game.
In the next couple of weeks.
We've got our best 11s. And we've got a couple of interviews to. We need to speak to a couple of ex-players who have indicated they'd be happy to come on.
Yeah.
the two that we've hopefully got lined up first, we know you'll enjoy both of them.
Yeah, both big favourites.
Yeah, and then we'll probably be back starting the weekly episodes in early July, in time for the friendlies, when we'll have the fixtures out at the end of June. We'll have more friendlies and hopefully some signings and changes in the squad.
Yep, definitely. What we might do a little mini episode on the fixtures release day, actually. We'll do just focusing on that and talking about the
Yeah, we could do a quick half hour or something, couldn't we?
Yeah, exactly. That's what we might do. But we'll also, what we'll do in pre-season, we'll do a nice episode from one of the pre-season friendlies because me and you are definitely going to be at one of them together, I think.
Yeah.
That should be good. So yeah, if you've got anything you'd like us to discuss or any comments or feedback, you can find it on the usual places. So at Brunton Bugle on Twitter, by email, bruntonbugle@gmail.com, or you can find us on Facebook now. Just search for Brunton Bugle and give us a like, and all the episodes go up on there as they go up. And if you haven't already, give us a subscribe. All good podcast apps. So you've got things like Acast, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and Google Podcasts. If you're on any of them as well, please give us a review. It really does help more people find out about the podcast. We've had some great feedback. It's been really good. And that's it, Dan. That's it. It's been a
interesting season.
Long old slog, hasn't it? Long old slog, and it's been a long old slog of an episode, actually. Over the 80-minute mark, so there you go. Thanks again, everyone, for joining us. Really appreciate you for listening all the season. Enjoy the summer, enjoy the Euros. We'll be back in June and July, and up the Blues.
Up the Blues.